of December 2020. Only 1 month left in this great year. Work session today is Brookman Area Concept Plan Update. Erica.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Brookman Concept Plan refinements. Alex Dupy is on the line from MIG. He has been working with us throughout this project, and I am just actually going to turn it over to him so he can give a presentation, and then we can answer questions, and then we can talk about the Planning Commission's recommendation.
All right. Great. Well, thank you everybody for having me in tonight. Once again, I'm Alex Dupy. I'm the Director of Planning Services for MIG, based out of Portland. So let me share my screen here real quick. And all right. Just a second to set it back up so I can see everybody. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
So I'll spend just a bit of time stepping through the process that we've gone through to get to where we are tonight. We have gotten to a point in the project where we do have a recommendation moving forward, and as Erica said, talking about Planning Commission recommendations as a result of conversations with them, and then talking about how this project could potentially modify the existing Brookman Edition concept plan and other changes that would need to occur within both the existing city's transportation plan as well as Washington County's transportation plan too. So I'll step through those various pieces, and then feel free as questions pop up just to ask, or we can wait until the end, whatever you're most comfortable with. So the purpose of this project is to look specifically at the Brookman Edition concept plan and clarify a really specific question that has been asked of this project, which is to look at the Brookman Road alignment and come to an agreement on what that should look like, both within Washington County's TSP as well as Sherwood's transportation system plan. When we first started this project, there was a bit of misalignment between what Washington County had assumed for the corridor and what this specific concept plan had approved for the corridor, really coming down to whether this should be a 3-lane cross section that's adopted through the concept plan, or a 5-lane cross section, which is what Washington County had assumed as a part of their transportation plan. So this project was really focused on those specific issues related to this area. Just to kind of remind you of this sensitive mouse, just to kind of remind you of the location that we're talking about. So this is the Brookman Edition area. So it's the area just north of Brookman Road. And it's essentially the area that's developing pretty rapidly at the moment, particularly the central portion of the area with single family residential. A number of subdivisions have either been approved or are actually approved and moving into construction. And so the time is important to kind of do this now, because as dedications and kind of road dedications and other pieces start to come in, it's important to make sure that we have either the right of way reserved, or that the ask is the correct ask for future development in this area. And so I'm just showing this just to kind of remind you kind of what's in the plan. In general, this is a single family residential area with pockets of commercial, which is the purple, adjacent to Highway 99, and then some multifamily and just a bit of a mixed use town center, which is that red box right in the middle there. And so we're going to talk through each of these kind of core areas and some of the alternatives that were evaluated for the corridor, but just to give you a sense of kind of what was initially proposed back about 10 years ago. So Brookman Road, you probably know this, but just so we're all on the same page. So Brookman Road is essentially that east-west black line on the map. And the concept plan had proposed to realign Brookman Road essentially just east of the railroad tracks to form more of a kind of a northwest southeast alignment as a new alignment to connect to Highway 99, which is different than what the existing alignment is, which is essentially going straight across. Part of that was to acknowledge at the time that the I-599W connector project was occurring. And so this was to, accommodate those pieces, but also, really to kind of think about what are some of the good connections that would be needed to support development, future development through this area. On the east side, there were some changes proposed as a part of this too. As you know, Brookman Road has two really tight 90-degree corners. And particularly what we've heard from stakeholders is that people go really fast through these corners. So part of the concept plan was to also look at, how if you were to modify or expand this road, how would you make that a safer connection, and also to avoid as much as possible impacts to existing residences in that area. Because even several years ago, there was development primarily on the north side. Early on, we started this project before COVID. If you remember that we were actually not dealing with COVID at some time in our history, it feels like a long time ago. But we met with stakeholders early on last summer, it's actually summer before last, to start talking about some of those, kind of the key issues they felt would be important to address as a part of this plan. What are some existing issues along the corridor, but also, how is the corridor used now? What are some of the kind of the pros and cons of what this area and this location provides, particularly around Brookman Road. But overall, people had told us that Brookman Road does not feel safe, particularly if you're a pedestrian, a cyclist, you're walking your dogs. A lot of people talked about, people using it for jogging, just for walking. It's a recreation space as well as, a transportation connector, and that a future design should be safe for all users. Many people acknowledge that this is an area that's developing, but it still feels rural in a lot of ways. And so that the future cross section should, be able to maintain a scenic aesthetic. And that's something that was important for many people, that let's not overbuild this thing if we don't need to. It should be safe for all users. That includes bikes and peds, as well as people pushing strollers. We also heard about people walking goats out in the area. So there's a number of different uses and things that need to be considered. And then also, and to the best way possible, connect to the rest of the city in a meaningful way. There are some significant environmental locations out in this area, some drainages that make that challenging. There's also railroad tracks and existing development. But as possible, make sure that this road can connect as much as possible to other roads within the area to provide more opportunities for connectivity. So we looked at three options. These are shown in the different colors here. Option one was to maintain the existing alignment. That's the red line on your map. And that's really just looking at the existing corridor and what would it look like if it were built to either a 3 or a 5 lane facility. And so what would the specific impacts be? We looked again at option two as both a 3 and a 5 lane facility, and that's what's in the existing concept plan now. And so you'll see that there's the revised alignment to the north on the west side, and then that alignment that comes slightly to the south of where existing Brookman Road is today on the east side. And then we also looked on the east side, potentially another alignment to maybe find a better location to connect to Lad Hill Road, but also to see if there's a way that we could avoid residents in that area just a little bit better than what the concept plan did. So those are the three options that we looked at in general. And I will say, and as I step through these, we really thought of these as kind of specific rooms, if you will, looking at the west, the central, and the east sides almost independently, because each of them have specific issues and challenges to consider. And so you could almost think of this as we looked at a kit of parts in a way to look at all of these different options, really from a connection standpoint, but also from impacts to existing and future development. So getting to the question of what this road might look like over time. So that was the key question for this project. In addition to the alignment questions, the other questions were, so what does this look like and what are the potential effects of a 5-lane arterial that meets county standards? And so the cross section on the left side of your screen, that's what the county has within their existing transportation plan. And that's currently what, from a development standpoint, subdivisions are being required to dedicate for right-of-way, which is about 98 feet. We also looked at a 3-lane concept, which is pretty similar to what's in the existing concept plan now. This was the cross section that is within the existing city transportation system plan. So, one travel lane in either direction with a left turn lane, but again, a much shorter or narrower cross section, obviously, because it has 2 fewer lanes. And then finally, we also looked at a 3-lane transitional road. And so the, kind of the unique thing with the Brookman Addition concept plan is that it's adjacent to it's the edge of the urban growth boundary. And so should there be a cross section that identifies the north side of Brookman Road as more urban, that provides urban facilities, and then on the south side, really a section that is more, kind of typical of a rural cross section. And we're seeing those being developed in other parts of Washington County too, or at least evaluated in other parts of Washington County too. It doesn't mean that the transitional road couldn't switch over to a 3-lane or 5-lane concept in the future. It really just looks at the focused more urban facility on the urban side of the urban growth boundary. So those are the 3 options that we looked at for each of those corridors that I just showed.
Alex, let's get a quick question.
Sure.
So, one of the challenges we're having on Roy Rogers right now was originally built out as a 3-lane road, and now it's the county's with the project moving it to 5 lanes, which is much needed, but because we didn't allocate the space, it's really constrained going through there, and it's not going to look great. And so I'm just curious. So 2 questions. One is, can you talk a little bit about the big picture? What's the county's plans? Is this ultimately, do they see this connecting all the way out to I-5, and are we going to see a lot of traffic diverting there from Yamhill County to get to I-5 as opposed to going up 12 Sherwood? And how are they looking at it in terms of connecting to Hillsborough? And I'm trying to understand the justification for 5 lanes. What's their vision for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I can speak to this section within Brookman. The 5-lane arterial, and Erica, maybe you can help me with this as well. The 5-lane arterial is one that is in the county's long-range plan, and that's one that they're requiring as development comes in to be able to dedicate that right-of-way. So if it were to become 5 lanes in the future, you wouldn't have the issues that you're having on Roy Rogers, where you have to, if buildings are built too close or whatever, that's already being required. The question about will this connect to I-5? That was certainly something that was looked at as a part of the I-599W connector, but we did coordinate with Clackamas County on this, and there's no interest from Clackamas County to continue this road, really east of Lad Hill as it enters Clackamas County. So that would definitely be, that was something that was evaluated, but it's not something Clackamas County was interested in continuing, kind of pushing this road further to the east to I-5.
Is that a disconnect?
That's their position. That's the county's position for the last 20 years. It does not mean that's the position in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road.
Sure.
So it's important to protect the option.
Yeah, because I just imagine if it's just connecting the neighborhoods, out to 99 effectively, or into downtown Sherwood, 5 lanes seems excessive. But I also worry about putting ourselves in a position where we have a repeat of what's going on with Roy Rogers at this point.
Yeah, and this actually jumps a bit to our recommendation, but I will say we did do a bunch of traffic analysis with this to see, really what's necessary as a part of this. And a 5-lane facility is not necessary, even in the long-range build-out plan. A 3-lane facility more than accommodates the flow of Brookman Road and what's expected in there.
You do not know this.
I'm sorry?
You do not. You're guessing on future. You truly do not know. So I'm sorry, but I'm just irritated by that whole statement.
I can think of at least 5 or 6 places in Sherwood where the traffic studies have said one thing, and within 5 years of it being built, it's been wrong. So I don't put a lot of faith in them myself.
Fair enough. So I'll leave it at that. I guess I think the point for this is that I think getting to your question, Counselor, about right-of-way requirements for an ultimate build-out of 5 lanes, that would be accommodated through what's already being required from Washington County, because this is a county road. And so it doesn't mean that they're going to build a 5-lane arterial now, but in the future, if it were determined that this were a project, that's something that would I guess could be possible without additional right-of-way requirements.
And I appreciate that, but my spidey sense tells me is 99 loads up, 12 in Sherwood loads up, and there's continued development not only in Sherwood and the Yamhill County. They're going to start looking for ways to divert traffic off 99, and Brookman seems an obvious choice in terms of long-term planning. And to Keith's point, Clackamas County, you never know what could happen in 2, 3, 5 years. So planning for the worst case, hate to put it that way, is probably the best way to go, at least in my opinion.
And I think that this, Julia, I think that's kind of what this is getting at, is ensuring that we're protecting that right of way for a 5-lane arterial, because we don't know, but not requiring developers to build 5 lanes because it's really big for what is necessary right now and probably not proportionate to what development could be required to do anyways. And so that's kind of where they're going with their recommendation.
Thank you, Julia.
So I would have done this presentation differently, but anyway, keep going.
So maybe I have just a few more slides. We can step through that. Then I'd love to be able to, as best I can, answer any questions that you have about this. And then certainly, we're in the draft phase of this, so we can just certainly work through other questions that you have as we move forward. So let me just finish up these couple pieces, and then we can come back to questions for that. So as I said, we looked at essentially, sorry, I think that's my kids making dinner upstairs. We looked at essentially 3 sub areas here. As I said, each of these areas have specific elements that we had to consider: a western, a central, and an eastern sub area. And the western sub area, we looked at the existing alignment as well as the concept plan alignment, and we coordinated with both ODOT, the city, as well as stakeholders. And overall, maintaining the existing alignment was pretty strongly the recommended option for a number of reasons. One is that it generally uses existing right-of-way to the greatest degree possible. It doesn't require the addition of new right-of-way. And so that felt like it was the most straightforward way to be able to provide that connection. And so the recommendation from the project team would be that we maintain the existing alignment within the existing right-of-way and modify the concept plan to show that. And just to show, and this was a question from Planning Commission, how would that affect potentially future development? This is a blow up of that area showing the commercial and mixed use core. There were some questions about, could you develop this site if you were to change that alignment? And we believe that you could pretty easily. You're still thinking about Old Highway 99 as a key spine through there, but we do believe that Brookman Road still can provide that connection, particularly if you clean up some of the access points. And you still can have that mixed use node as well as those commercial features adjacent to 99W. So we didn't recommend changing any zoning as a part of this. It was really about, could you develop this in a way that makes sense by using the existing right-of-way with Brookman Road? And we believe that you can. And this was just a concept that we had developed to show that. For the central.
One thing, can I jump in real quick here?
Sure.
So one thing that Planning Commission kind of had a lot of discussion about, and there were several members of the commission that wanted to make sure council knew about this. So as part of this relook, the noticing that was done, and therefore what we were allowed to essentially, what the Planning Commission was allowed to recommend to council was really only the road realignment. Commission really had a lot of concerns around the zoning that's in this concept plan, and maybe wanted to take another look at the zoning in this part of the concept plan and maybe make some changes to it, but that wasn't allowed given the noticing that was done. So they wanted to make sure council was aware so that we may decide we want to look at the zoning of this section as this proceeds along further. So I just want to make sure that message was passed along.
Thank you, Councilor. And I think just to clarify, the question around zoning was really reducing multifamily densities within this area. It wasn't a question about whether or not the kind of the mixed use node functions or a commercial. It was more about the existing density within the current concept plan, and should it be as high as it is today.
I think it was that, but it was also potentially moving some of it around to maybe ensure that people are taking more desirable routes instead of routing up through existing neighborhoods. So I think there was a little bit of both around location and density of the higher the commercial and or higher density residential zones is what I recall.
Great, thank you for that clarification. All right, so let me just wrap these last two pieces. In the central portion, it maintains the existing right-of-way, so we didn't recommend really any changes within this area. The existing subdivisions are already being required to dedicate the 48 feet, or excuse me, the 49 feet for the half street improvements. As Julia said, that's generally consistent with development on a single side of the road. And then on the east side, we looked at the existing alignment option, and to be able to provide a road of the scale that the city, as well as the county, and even the city, from a 3-lane facility, if you kept the existing alignment, you would be affecting a number of residences. So that was quickly kind of pushed off the table because we felt there were better options for that. We looked at the concept plan option again, and with the widening of the roadway, potentially we could see more impact to property adjacent. So we looked at that southern option as well, and we felt that even with the widening right-of-way, that likely has a smaller likelihood of affecting residences directly. It's still certainly a large footprint, but that potentially that would be a better connection to Ladd Hill, as well as a smaller impact to existing residences in the area. So those are the two main changes to the concept plan that coming out of this are looking at that more southern alignment, and then on the west side, keeping the existing alignment on Brookman Road as opposed to going to the north that the current concept plan recommends.
So in the, excuse me, in your traffic study you did on that, what were your assumptions in terms of traffic going up? Was it just to service the residential areas within the Brookman concept plan, or were you taking into account that that could become a cut through to get over to Oregon Street and around Sherwood?
The traffic analysis looked, they look at regional traffic flow as well as local, and then we also looked at some specific intersections to see how those might function. From an existing standpoint, the roads generally function well, or the intersections generally function well, and with even a 3-lane facility, looking at what the projected growth is on the west side of Highway 99 as well as Brookman, the recommendation out of that was that a 3-lane facility, whether it's transitional or a full 3-lane, would be acceptable to accommodate that traffic. And so that's, I know there's some potential disagreement on the traffic study, but that's from a recommendation standpoint. We're looking at in the long term preserving the right-of-way for the 5-lane facility, but now really building that 3-lane transitional facility because you are backed up to the existing urban growth boundary. This is generally what existing landowners, as they develop, are being required to dedicate anyways, that this would be a way to balance the needs now, but still providing the space to accommodate the future growth as needed.
So another question, the south of Brookman Road is the 100-year reserve, is that correct?
No.
So, no?
Nope.
What is it?
Nope.
It's urban reserve.
It's urban reserve.
So there's additional urban reserve out there. Okay. So in the
20, give it 20 years, maybe 30 years.
yeah,
It'll get up.
yeah, because where I was going with my question was in terms of the right of way for that 5 lanes, the ultimate rollout, is that half of that is in the current Brookman and half of that is in the urban reserve, or is it all in the Brookman area at this point?
Erica, correct me if I'm wrong, but generally when we're measuring the dedication for the development, it's from the center line of Brookman Road.
Right, that is correct.
And so that if the area to the south were to develop, that additional 49 feet would come from the center line south. So
Right.
that would be, so it would go into that urban growth area. And that's why we're recommending the 3-lane facility now, because that can generally be accommodated within the existing UGB and within pretty much within what developers have to dedicate anyways for those spaces, with the additional space on Brookman Road on the south of the center line.
And still allow for the grass strip, the sidewalk, and trees and all that.
Correct.
Okay. Is this the last slide?
Yes, I think we can stop there. I'm sure there's questions.
All right, so 5-lane facility crossing a railroad track at a steep angle. What is the requirement from ODOT for such crossing, or ODOT rail?
We and I don't have that in the presentation, but we did coordinate with ODOT Rail about that specifically, and so we did some analysis for what would be required. ODOT Rail said that we need to provide crossing gates, and then we also had to do studies to make sure that if the crossing gates were down, there wouldn't be backup into Highway 99. We did that study, and it showed that with the crossing gates at that location for a 5-lane facility, it would be adequate. And we have done a conceptual design showing what that would look like with bicycles and pedestrians as well too. That would meet AASHTO standards.
Is it at 3-lane?
So pull that up along with what that's going to look like, considering the high pressure gas line that's right there as well.
So
sure.
just as a reminder, I mean, you guys probably, I know you know this, but I'll say it anyways. So we're going to have a hearing at the next meeting with this, and so some of this we wanted you not to have to spend too much time getting into the details in the hearing and have this background.
I hate this presentation.
What's that?
So,
Councilor, are there specific things that you'd like us to address? I mean, I hear what you're saying, I think, but I'd like to be able to answer those as much as possible. I think we do have, some of the information you're asking for, but I do want to respect your time because I know we're done at 7. What are some things that you need to see as a part of this?
Julia. I'm so disappointed by this whole thing. It's not even funny. So I'll do it offline.
Okay.
And this is Mayor Mays. Sorry, you don't know this, but. All right,
Julia, so we can work with you to.
Comments in our last 2 minutes? Or we can extend it if folks would like to extend it. So one comment is the spending of the money on this project and not even touching in any of the concept plan, which is what it was sold at to the Planning Commission and maybe the councilors, is incredibly disappointing. Concerns of speed of this future road and distancing and how all of that impacts the west end of this is a grave concern to me that I don't think has been addressed. I'll text Julia or whatever later.
Mayor, from a land use standpoint, just so we can dive into this a little bit more, are there specific issues on the land use side that what issues do you feel should be addressed as a part of that?
So certainly a bigger road is going to mean a bigger speed, which is going to mean bigger spacing between intersections, and different spacing of intersections in relation to including backed up to 99. I think has to be examined, and then with that kind of spacing of intersections, what is that going to impact the flow of workers and families in this part of town?
Okay, so from a spacing standpoint, where certainly that's something that we did look at in the concept that we put together for the adjacent land, the land adjacent to Highway 99. We did remove some of those, drawn in access points, maintaining the existing access points at old Highway 99W. To be honest, there aren't a ton of roads that come in through this area. And so from a spacing standpoint, it's really requiring that development address those spacing standards along the roadway. And those are set with Washington County from a location and distance standpoint. And then to address 2 of your other questions, I believe ODOT Rail is comfortable with the design that we put together for this. We did coordinate with the with Northwest Natural. I believe that's the high pressure gas line through this area. They were comfortable with the proposed alignment at 98 feet. They were very clear that the line is very deep and that as development occurs, additional coordination would be required. But at this stage of the process, they were comfortable with keeping the alignment where it's at and with the 98 feet right of way.
So there's some flaws in it. I mean, a chunk of that line, a junction, is above ground, not 20 feet off the shoulder of this road. And the distancing is of serious concern, especially if the potential of this intersection at 99 ends up being a grade separated intersection, which is possible. So.
And that's something that, you know, certainly well down the road, if there was the need for that, our traffic analysis, which I know you've already been clear about where you stand on that, showed that there is not a need for that an accurate or a grade separated crossing for that, and that the 3-lane facility is more than enough for, you know, all of the growth projected within this area. That doesn't mean that in some time in the future it wouldn't go to 5 lanes. But, you know, we looked out to 2040, and that's what the traffic analysis is showing for demand.
Again, it's all that matters, but it depends on the inputs that you get to get your output. So I don't give it any credence.
Okay.
All right.
So can I ask if others, I mean, obviously, Mayor Mays, you'll get me and Erica some comments and questions so we can make sure we address those prior to or at the hearing. But if anybody else has any questions, if you can send them to Erica and or me, so we can just make sure that the hearing is answering as many of your questions as possible.
Sure. Yeah. I just have one quick one before we adjourn this, if I could ask. You mentioned that the queuing space between 99 and that the railroad crossing was adequate for 5 lanes. Based on the traffic study, is it adequate with 3 lanes?
Yeah, we looked at both options, and so there was even if you put crossing barriers at the railroad, you still would be fine for queuing on the roadway with either a 3 or a 5 lane facility.
And I think and just throw this out there, part of the reason at least that I think about a separated, grade crossing there is it's not just about traffic, it's about connecting East and West Sherwood and not having this barrier of 99 West with the long waits at the traffic lights, to keep our community connected, and it's a challenge we already have. So, if we could go with the overpass there from day one, that would be ideal. Probably not in the cards, but we should allow for that.
Sure. Erica and Julia, last question for this. So we're having development going out there. We're adjusting the alignment. The development that happens down there, they're not building any of this improved road. Is that correct?
So right now, the developments that are going on out there, they're dedicating the right-of-way for their portion that they have to dedicate for. And then they're some of them are paying a fee in lieu for improvements down the road. No pun intended.
Because of the way the road is, it would be nearly impossible for them to just do their specific improvements.
I know. I'm wanting the community to know that development's going on down there, and at this point, there's zero actual activity going to be occurring on the roadway for a variety of reasons, and their frustration is our frustration. So I was having a great day. I was absolutely having a great day, other than the last half hour. So with that, any other last comments before we adjourn? Awesome. Well, we are adjourned from the work session. We'll take a 5-minute break before we start our city council meeting.
All right, well, thank you for the time.
Thanks, Alex.